Today's guest is Kim Moseman. She's an author, wellness and nutrition coach, former gym owner. What I love most about her is she lives out her book. You're going to hear it in her voice today on how she just reflects out joy. She shows us and all of those around her how to love ourselves while becoming the person we were meant to be. Who's the person you're being? Are you satisfied? Welcome to Be the Person, a podcast for the brave and the curious, those ready to explore their true potential. I'm your host, Annie Randall. Join me as we delve into topics and ask unexpected questions to unlock your best self. Welcome to Be the Person podcast. I can't wait for you to hear from today's guest. Kim Moseman is an author. She's a nutrition and wellness coach. I just read her book and just loved it. So welcome to the podcast, Kim.
Thank you, Annie. I'm glad to be here.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit about you and your story of how did you get to where you are today and writing this book?
Well, today I'm an author and I'm a retired woman. So I used being an author or writing a book to fill my time. But prior to this, I am a wife and a mother and a new grandmother. My husband and I owned restaurants for a long time. And after we reached a point where all we were talking about was either our boys or the restaurants, I decided to jump into a new adventure and I opened a gym. And I successfully, I think, ran that gym for 9 years. And throughout that process, my gym was a challenge gym. So people would come in, I'd meet them out of the blue, maybe referred by another person or a friend, and they would make a transformation over 9 weeks and then take a picture, and there was a winner. And so I got to meet a lot of people that I had never known previously in my life. And through that process, they would share their stories and their experiences, and I was able to watch them and learn from them. And I thought after my retirement, gosh, I ought to write this down. So yeah, here I am.
Yeah. I love that. And I love how you talk in the book how much community was a part of your gym. And maybe that's why I really resonated with you because at Orange Theory, community is such a big part of our gym and our life and the studio. Did you tell me about after leaving the gym? Was that challenging for you or did you pick up community somewhere else?
Mm. Initially, it was terrible leaving the gym. It's everything. My family was involved. One son was a personal trainer. My husband taught kickboxing classes. Another son was too young, but he was always there. And the gym just was our family. So when I locked those doors for the final time, I thought that I would enjoy sleeping in and I thought that I would enjoy the freedom, but I was at a loss for what to do. I felt like I had no purpose and I spiraled a little bit out of control and dropped some habits and probably became my worst client ever, to be honest. It was, um, yeah, it was not my best time. So
Yeah, I
if
can
I were to go
understand
back
that.
again, I don't know how I'd prepare for it differently than I did. It's hard to go from seeing 250 people and being a part of something big and wonderful to all of a sudden being by yourself.
So you own the gym, and then it really is more of maybe a downturn in life of challenging time that goes on for a while. Is that correct? And then you decide at that point, you know what? I am going to write this book. And
Yeah.
tell me a little bit. And for our readers, I have it right here. It's Reflections of Joy, learning to love the woman while becoming the one you're meant to be. And I so love that title because sometimes we're so hard on ourselves. We don't love ourselves where we're at, but we should also
Mhm.
love ourselves enough not to stay where we're at.
I agree. I agree. The change, like I always knew that I wanted to write a book. And when I had the gym, I wrote weekly newsletters and I tried to share recipes and motivation and keep things going. And all along, I thought I would write a book, but I thought that I would write a how to book. a manual for people who weren't a part of my gym to help them eat right, exercise, sleep, do all the things. And throughout that period of time, so I closed in 2017, and I really started focusing on gathering my notes and writing the outline and everything in 2020 when we all had so much free time. But it moved from a how-to book to a how-I book. So for 3 years, I feel like I really lost a sense of where I was headed. I knew who I was. My foundation was always the same, but I wasn't headed in the same direction. And so I had to turn things around and prioritize some new efforts. For 9 years, it was all about the gym and my boys and eating right and moving all the time. That's what I focused on. And then without those focuses, I learned how much I needed my faith and I really needed community and how I needed some rituals in my life that were different than just the maybe 3 square meals and a couple of snacks or my daily exercise. Those things are still important, but I realized the importance of some other things during that time. So,
And I love that's how you kick it off in the first chapter. I really resonated because it's the chapter title was giving it up, but you said you really look through a different lens. One of the quotes I'm going to read is I'm no longer dieting because I want to be thinner. I'm choosing foods because I want to feel good. And I love that. And you do it so many different ways about why you move and how you're not hiding from the camera anymore. You're engaging in life. Tell me some of those shifts of like why and how they started to happen in your life.
I had always been not always. I started out heavy and maybe not happy with myself, and then I started a program similar to myself and really caught the fitness bug. And so from 4 in my 40s, I did a program that was similar and I had great changes, and those became my priorities. But sometimes when a thing is new, it becomes your everything, and
Mhm.
you shut out anything that's not within that path of where you're headed. And so I was very regimented with my exercise, very regimented with my food and things. And although it served me at the moment, it maybe was too rigid to be sustainable for the rest of my life. And so the shift really came in trying to find a way to re-embrace exercise with it without it being so rigid, and to eat healthy without it being monotonous, if you will. So my boys moved out during that time period as well. I mean, grew up, went to college, all the things. And so we're empty nesters, and my husband wants to eat one way and I want to eat another. He wants to eat for pleasure. I want to eat for weight loss. And so somehow we had to merge those things and just make them good and forever and sustainable and still get the same outcome. I've just decided that life is too short to package everything I do in a little box. I want to experience things and I want to enjoy things. And I think you can do that within the bigger box of good health, right? So,
I just love that. I love that philosophy because I think you're right of you can be super strict and super dialed in for a time, but you can't live the rest of your life happily. I don't think doing that it's just too hard of there's so much more and I'm a big fan of the 80-20 rule. There
mhm,
is room for dessert and there's room for chicken breasts and broccoli on certain days and there's room for movement, but I don't have to do it to burn 500 calories every day. I can do it just because I love to walk outside. So I think both of
right.
those are finding such a good mix.
Yep. And there was a time where I used to exercise and walk outside so I could earn the piece of cake. And I don't think we have to do that. If you live within the 80-20 boundaries, I think there's room for everything. There's room for fun, Though I personally think chicken and broccoli are delicious, and I cook them in all kinds of different ways. My husband would disagree, but yeah, I think you need to experiment with how you cook and different recipes so you can have healthy things that taste delicious, but you also have to have some fun and have the chocolate cake or have a glass of wine occasionally or whatever it is that you wanna do.
Yeah. I love the
Yeah.
recipes at the end of the book. In fact, I made the pork carnitas this week and
Uh-huh.
I made your stuffed peppers this weekend. So some really great recipes in the back that you share with all of us.
Oh, thank you. Yep. Those are standards. Those are not standards. They're always on the menu. Every month we have those because they're easy and they stretch a long way. So,
Exactly.
yeah.
You also talk about your faith in this journey and how over life, I think probably a lot of people can relate of sometimes you would pray and go to church and then other times in life you seemed far from faith, but this whole journey has brought you back and you felt like it was the missing piece. Can you tell me more about that?
Yeah. God has always been there. I don't think I've ever I think I've turned my back on him, but I've always known that he was there. In all of my times of need, when I've turned to God, God has been faithful to me, but I may not have been as faithful to him. And I wasn't in a depressed state, but I was in a darker space after I closed the gym and just really didn't want anything to do with anything. And I'd look in the mirror and I would think, ugh, what have you done with yourself? And I feel like in life we become someone, and the standards we hold ourselves to are so much stricter than the standards other people hold us to. So I used to be a certain size and I used to run a gym and I used to be capable of doing all these things. And so in my mind, I think people expect that of me. And if I'm no longer exactly that size or that capability, then I think that people think differently of me. And I had just reached a point where I didn't want to go out. I didn't want to do things. I didn't want to be with people who may have known me when. And
Mm.
I started reflecting more. I started journaling more. I was reading a lot. And one day I turned the page in my journal and there was scripture at the top and from the Song of Solomon, and it said, "You are beautiful, my dear, there's no flaw in you." And I'm paraphrasing, but it hit right in my heart. And it was the right thing at the right time because I came to a realization that God loves me no matter where I am in the journey. God loves me whether I'm a size double X or whether I'm a small. I mean, like, surely the Lord wants me to be healthy and to be living the best life that I can, but I'm not less of a person because of my physical size or ability. And it seemed to be the change that I personally needed. All of a sudden, it was, I can't be afraid. If you look at me and you think something bad about me, that's on you because I'm still Kim and my heart is still the same and my head is still the same and my love for you is still the same. So it shouldn't matter to you what I look like. I do think we have a responsibility, and I talk about body responsibility in the book as well, but I'm still Kim. And that was the big shift for me. And somehow it made me feel like I wanted to do better because if someone can love me unconditionally, then I should do the best that I can to be healthy and to be someone who makes myself happy.
So good. And I really feel like somebody listening just needs to hear that. Like, it doesn't matter what size you're at. I agree with you. Like, you want to be your best self, and there are things to do to get there. But if you're not right now, God still loves you exactly the same. Like, you are not less lovable because you gained weight. And I think when we start looking or like through God's eyes, it makes such a difference. Like, how I would look at my kids, I would never love them less if they were a different size. I mean, that just seems silly as a mom. We could all relate to that. But somehow I agree with
Mhm.
you, we hold ourselves to a whole different standard.
We do, and the things that we say to ourselves when we look in the mirror, just like you said, we would never think to say that to our children or to a best friend or to someone we love. We would never do that, and nor would we not do it, we wouldn't even think it. And so I think that was a big breakthrough for me too. When I had the conversations with the people who love me, sure, they want me to be happy and they want me to be healthy, but they didn't love me less because I had changed.
Absolutely. One of the things that really resonated with me is how you talk about you can't really make lasting change without self love. Like people, I can relate to this. People come into the studio or the gym and they want to make physical change. And that can be like amazing and positive. Like they want to feel skinny and sexy and loved. But really, you have to love yourself first if that change is going to last. Otherwise, you end up self-sabotaging. Would you agree?
Absolutely. And I saw so many men and women who maybe thought that life was going to be better when they were a different size or a different weight and that all the problems were going to go away. Maybe their marriage would be stronger or if they could play with their kids or and all of those things, they're all good reasons to start. But your body shape and size does not just because you reach a goal doesn't mean all the world's problems go away. And it would break my heart to see people like I'd watch them in class and their endurance or their stamina or the amount of weight that they could lift was obviously improving. And I could see their pants getting baggy or just their double chin going away, whatever it is. We see it because we're on the outside.
Yeah.
But then they would step on the scale and all of that good would just deflate right out of them because they were solely focused on that one measurement. And I just think there's so much good that happens when you're taking care of yourself. And if people could learn, if somehow we could look in the mirror and take a screenshot and store it in there so we could look at it again the next week or the next month and compare, we'd be so much better off because good change happens even if the scale doesn't move.
Yes. Yes, agree. I honestly am not a fan of the scale at all. Maybe the
Mm.
InBody machine, I'm a big fan of that, of you can measure fat and muscle. And I even gave
Yep.
our studio the example. I tore my hamstring earlier this year and I couldn't work out. And I had done an InBody in January. And then I couldn't do anything for 3 months. I did another in-body, and it was interesting because in that time, the scale actually went down because I did dial in my eating, but what really
Mhm.
happened, I lost muscle. And when you see that and that happens, that's no good either. So, so
Right.
many ladies, and I'm sure you can relate to this, the opposite happens of they can start working out and they gain muscle. Their clothes fit different. They lose the double chin, the exact same thing you're saying. Maybe the number on the
Yep.
scale doesn't change, but the composition drastically changes. And I love that.
Yes. And there's an example that I give in the book. When I was married very young, and when I was 20 and I went dress shopping for my very first wedding, I weighed 125 pounds. And I wore a size, I mean, sizes were different back then, but I wore a size 7-8, sometimes a 9-10. Well, fast forward into my 40s when I was actively running the gym and working out and lifting weights for the first time in my life. And when I was young, I was a swimmer. It was all cardio. Once I started lifting weights, my body composition changed. I was wearing fours and sixes and eights comfortably, and I weighed 30 pounds more. And so the scale is I just wish that we could ban scales
Yeah.
and spend our lives with the in-body machine or you really just being able to look in the mirror and say, "Oh my gosh, look, there's definition here, there's muscle tone here." I wish we could love ourselves enough to push the scale away. So,
Agreed. And you talk
yeah.
about that. You talk about non-scale victories. Can you tell us a little bit
Mhm.
about that? What is it and how did you start to incorporate that?
Non-scale victories are really, truly just all of those great things that happen when you're taking care of yourself that don't involve the scale. So maybe it's that you notice you pick up that 50-pound bag of dog food one day and you're just throwing it around like nothing. It's easy to pick up. Maybe it's that you're in a workout class and you can hold a plank for a long time in good form and it doesn't ache. Maybe it's good sleep. There are so many ways to chart our progress. Sometimes it's slipping on that pair of jeans that you haven't worn for 2 weeks and thinking, "Oh my gosh, there's room in here." All of the things that tell us I'm making progress without it being directly correlated to a number on the scale. And there are so many ways. But again, as an instructor or a gym owner or a personal trainer, it's easy for us to see the changes from the outside. That person comes in to see us occasionally, or maybe we see them once or twice a week, and the change is so evident. But for us as individuals, we wake up every morning and we see the same thing in the mirror. And it's hard to truly appreciate the progress that's made on the path to our goals.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think if you're listening and maybe you're frustrated with the scale, you're frustrated with how you look in the mirror, like I would just dial that back on one, looking to see, like, how does God see me? When I started doing that and really living for an audience of one instead of caring what everyone else thinks. I mean, there are days still, I'm not going to say like I look in the mirror and I think it's perfect. Like we all have our struggles, but I
Right.
will say
Yep.
it changed overall that voice in my head to start to say kinder things and to step away from, I don't weigh myself anymore. I work on really the big buckets like you do because I want to be healthy. Like I try and eat right and move every day, but I don't do it to burn a certain amount of calories or restrict calories to X amount. Like I do it because I want to be healthy and I want to feel my best. And it just is such a different mindset when we do that.
It is. And I'm not sure. You and I haven't discussed our ages. I don't know the person who's listening out there. They might be 20, they might be 60. At my age, my body responds differently than it did when I was 20. I'm 57 years old. Walking feels amazing, and I can walk and walk and walk. But if I were to try, well, I did try to kickbox again. My body, it's been a while. My body doesn't respond as favorably. And so I don't do things that hurt. Now, I still love a good muscle burn. I still like to know when I wake up tomorrow that I did some good work today. But I'm talking about if it hurts, there's something else that you can do that's enjoyable and that is good for your body. And
Mm.
like you said, when I'm answering to an audience of one, what I'm trying to do is take the very best care of the gift that I've been given. And my intent is not to be thin or to look a certain way anymore. I just want to feel good and I want to be here as long as I can. Like I said, I'm a new grandmother. I want to be able to crawl around on the floor with those little boys, and I want to experience as much of their lives as I can. And that means I have a responsibility to take care of this good body in a way that's going to keep me here as long as I possibly can.
Yeah. So important. And I think people listening, like I can relate. I'm 49 and running for me was my go-to for a long time. And after a hip surgery, like it isn't anymore. I hope someday it comes back, but it may not. And it's okay. Like I'm just giving myself that grace. Like you can ride a bike or the strider, you can walk, and it's still great of just giving ourself that permission and okay to change is super important.
Yeah. And if you can find some really great people to do it with, that's even better because it takes your mind off of what I can't do and it just makes it a great experience, right?
Mhm. I'm excited to share with you that I updated my website, Be the Person CO for Colorado.com, with all of my favorite things. It has exclusive links with discounts for listeners of Be the Person podcast. It has things like favorite protein bars, books, protein powders. So check it out at BeThePersonCO.com. One of the things that I really appreciated, and I've highlighted several to go back to as I was reading because I didn't have time exactly when I was reading, but I want to make sure I do them because I am a journaler too. Is you give
Mhm.
such great journal prompts. And really, sometimes they're like these mini to dos. Sometimes they're like health to do, sometimes they're a journal prompt, but you also give time frames. Sometimes they're quick and easy, sometimes they're a little longer. They might take 30 minutes. What made you put those in, or are those things that you use?
I I do. I journal every day. And for the journal prompts at the end of every section, sometimes they only have a few minutes and I just want to glaze over, and sometimes I want to dig deep. In the back of each chapter, I've included a section called crowding out. And I tried to do it for every single different thing I talk about, whether it was my faith or my food or my exercise or getting out in community. And I think it's important to give yourself the space and the opportunity to do new things. And as a gym owner and a personal trainer, the thing I heard more often than anything is I just don't have time. And so that's where crowding out came in for me, because when I work with people on their food, it's so easy to think about what I can't have. And so I started trying to get them to think about what they could have. And when they would add good in and push the bad out, we were crowding out. And I have a certification with the Institute of Integrative Nutrition, and they talk a lot about crowding out. Give me a little bit more good and push out the bad. And really, that relates to everything in life. I do have time. I have time for the things that are important to me, but sometimes I only have 5 minutes. Sometimes I have 30. And so I really tried to give my readers good ideas of how they can fill their moments. Maybe you want to become a journaler and you don't have time to sit down for an hour every morning like I do. Well, what are some little 5-minute opportunities for you, or some 10 minutes? Maybe you want to pray and you just think, well, I don't know how. Well, I give you opportunities and I try to give you guidance. Give me a minute. When the clock strikes 3:33, and I happen to see it on my watch, it's an automatic trigger for me. Trigger. It's an automatic habit. I don't know. I view it as God tapping me on the shoulder and saying, "Hey Kim, how are you? I'm thinking about you." I do it whether it's 3:33 or 1:11. It's a 1-minute moment for me to check in with God and say, "Hey, thank you," or "Hey, I need you," or "By the way, could you help me here?" So, I just whatever it is in your life that you want to accomplish or you want to make a bigger part of your life, there are little ways to get there.
Yeah. So good, because I think you're
Yeah.
right. So many times we just say, I don't have time. If you really look and prioritize, we do have time for the things that matter.
Mhm.
I think one of the biggest things you talk a little bit about, or we've talked so far about purpose, owning the gyms, you had this purpose, you were helping people. After you go in and you lose that community, you lose maybe your what you did every single day, and then you decide to write the book. But talk to me about just purpose, and because there were times in there, I'm guessing you weren't exactly sure of your purpose. And even today, this is something like I can struggle with of like doing the podcast or speaking, like, God, what is my true purpose? What are you leading me towards? Has that
Mhm.
been a struggle for you to walk through? If it has, some of the things you've done to uncover it?
Purpose was a big thing for me, or a big void when I closed the gym. I had the gym my sole purpose every day was to take care of people. And when you boil it all down, it's not what it said on my business card, but that's what I was doing. I was coaching and I was loving and I was caring for and supporting people on their journey and change. And really, truly, my sons as well. That's what we do as parents is we try to facilitate that opportunity to grow and to change. And when those things all happen to go away at the same time, I was sitting here thinking, is this it? I was 50 years old at the time. And am I done? And so knowing I wasn't done, I took some certification courses and I took some local classes at our university. I live in Ames, Iowa, so there's a big university here. I took some photography classes and I took some different watercolor classes and just really tried to explore some things that I had never had time for as a mother or as a business owner. So I'm sitting here with all this free time. Why not experiment with some different things? And, and somehow through all of this, the journaling prevailed and the writing prevailed. And I joined a writer's group. And I think if we have passions or something that's a hobby, it's okay to join a bigger group. Maybe you like to journal, or maybe you like to write short stories. Join a writer's group. See, maybe there's a book in you. Maybe you'd like to be a photographer. Maybe you'd, who knows? But I feel like we're all called to do something. And I feel like there is a, a, a beautiful purpose to each of our lives. But I don't know that we all know what that is when we're 18 years old and we're plotting out our lives. And so if you're given the opportunity to try something new and to do something that you've always thought, oh, when I retire, I'm going to do this. Well, go do it. Just go do it. And you never know what might happen. You might write a book. It was the farthest thing from my mind, but I did it and I'm proud of it. And there's another one in the works. So maybe that's what I was intended to do.
I just love that so much because I think sometimes we believe we have to know I'm going to do X to get to Y to get to Z and the whole thing planned out and ready to go. And that's just not how life works. It's not how we ever uncover our purpose. Like, I didn't
Yep.
expect to be doing a podcast or owning gyms, but I just took the next step, similar to how you're saying of just writing the book. And I love the fact that you did things along the way because one, I think it just shows so much courage on your part to jump in and take a class, try something new. And maybe it's just for fun and maybe it ends up being part of your career. But either way, like what a really cool experience to do.
hmm Well, when you look at, if you're a parent and your kid comes home and says, oh my gosh, I want to try this. So and so is taking a taekwondo class. I want to try. I if you're like I am, not one time did I ever say, "Oh, no, you won't be any good at that," right? We give them the opportunities to explore and to learn who they are. We should be no different. Maybe it's just when we're in our 50s and 60s that we try things for the first time. So, yeah.
Arthur Brooks wrote a book, it's called Strength to Strength, and it was really impactful for me on the age we're in, like late 40s to late 50s of really it's a time you can reinvent yourself. Of you decline a lot of times in the field that you're in, and we don't want to think about that. But I see that in the gym. I have managers and coaches, and they are amazing and so, so good. And it's not that I can't do it. I'm just probably better at developing them than I am actually doing it. And it was such a good point of view. As that goes down, we can find a whole nother hill to climb the second half of life if we're willing to try and be new at something. We just have to have the courage to do it. And I guess you're like an inspiration to show, yes, that's possible.
I think you just have to be vulnerable enough to say, "I don't know everything yet."
Mhm.
Because, like you were saying, in your gyms, you are the expert. But our focus sometimes changes and we need to become the mentor. Not I don't need to put on a mic and teach a kickboxing class anymore, but I can teach someone the rhythms and how to put something together. Just like you're saying, if you're willing to move through the flow and try different things and take that next vulnerable step to learn something new, life can be pretty cool.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, you talk about your bucket list and different things on there. What are some things that you're looking forward to maybe in the next year or 5 years? Things on your bucket list that you would love to accomplish?
Well, through the writing process, I have learned that I love the writing process. And so I wrote my book with a small hybrid publisher who put us in a cohort. And there's a group of 13 ladies that have become very close. We beta read for one another, we proofread for one another, we developmentally. And I've discovered this great passion for that. So I've actually signed up for some classes and I'm trying to explore that. That's on my bucket list. I would love to help someone else launch a book from start to finish. I think that'd be exciting. We have a lot of travel plans in my bucket list. There are places in this country and in this world that I've not been. And I've now written a nonfiction book, but I woke up the other morning and I had a book on my brain. I don't know if I dreamt about it or if it was planted there, but on my bucket list now may be a fiction book. So nothing huge or scary, but scary enough that, yeah, they're on my list.
I think those are great bucket list items. And if you're listening and you don't have a bucket list, man, I would just grab that journal, grab that piece of paper, just start writing. Even if you're like, I don't even know what to write. It is so fun. If you don't have one, maybe you stop dreaming and maybe it's time to start dreaming again to be like, what if or what could? And even things that you would just never even imagine happen, but you would love for them, write them on that bucket list because you just never know. I think it's your permission to dream list.
Absolutely. And even if it takes a little prompt, like if I won the lottery, what would I do? Start there and then start looking at your own life and implement those things even without the $1,000,000 lottery. So, yeah.
What does being healthy for Kim look like in this season? What are things that are important to you that you really are non negotiables every day or every week?
Every day I wake up and I do the same thing for the first hour of my life. Whether I'm home or on vacation, I wake up and I first brew a cup of coffee. And then I drink a glass of water and I write for the next 30 minutes or so. I dump all of the dreams and the gook and the frustrations and everything out onto the page. And it doesn't have to be pretty and it doesn't have to be purposeful. It just empties my brain. And then I spend the next 30 minutes to an hour walking and praying. And I typically do those at the same time because I feel closest to God when I'm in nature. It's hard when I'm sitting in my house and there's people moving around and other things for me to either meditate or pray. So I've combined those together. Those are my non-negotiables. I mean, coffee, water, walking, God. Those are the things that I do every single day. Now, the things I add on most days, 80 ounces of water because I feel better. And I keep track. I don't write down volumes or anything, but I have this cute little checklist on my fridge and I mark off, and it's my goal to eat 30 different vegetables or 30 portions of vegetables a week. Again, just because I feel better, not for any measurement purposes or anything. I just try to get my veggies in. That's it for me. Other things fall in and we process them as they come.
Well, they're pretty good though. If you can, I think if we could all do that it would really set us up for success. So really great.
Yeah.
I love to wrap up with people's 1 to 2 favorite books. What are books that have made a difference in your life?
Mm. Well, number one's always going to be Reflections of Joy for me, at least until the next book comes along. But probably fiction book, The Red Tent is my all-time favorite book by Anita Diamante, and I love it because, it's biblically based, but again, it's fiction. It's written in first person, and it's just a beautiful story of community and of the importance in faith. It was written a long time ago, but it's still one of my favorites. I love Life's Golden Ticket by Brendan Burchard. And that is a story of second chances and what ifs. And every year around Christmas time, I try to find a book and I purchase one for myself, my husband, my two sons, and their wives. And we all read it and then we compare what we think. We have a mini book club, but so that was our book 2 years ago. And then, oh, there's one other one. The Artist's Way. The Artist's Way, I think, is an incredible book, and it's written by Julia Cameron, and that's where I learned about morning pages. And through her book, she talks about the importance of getting it all out there. Everyone has a story. Maybe you don't want to publish it, but maybe you just want to get it out. But she also talks about wonderful things like an artist date every week with yourself, where you get 1 hour to just wander and do and explore the things that you want to. And I think it's a book that we all should read at least once, and to a lot of ways in her book to turn your focus back on yourself and learn to love your creative side again. So those would be my choices.
So good. I haven't read any of those, so I'm excited to read some of those. And honestly, I was just thinking if I gave my kids and husband a book and told them we were doing a mini book club, I would probably, they're teenagers. So I might have to wait a few years for that because I think right now I get a lot of eye rolls and being a lot of complaining, actually.
You might. My kids are all out of college and starting their families, so and they're all very active readers. I'm sure they hide their eye rolls. I've given them some books that they didn't like, but this was one that everyone loved, so
Okay, that's good. I love that. And I'm just going to tuck that away in the back of my head for a few years down the road that maybe we
yep,
could try that and they'll do it for me. Kim,
yeah.
I know people have connected with you. I'll definitely link to your book. What is the best way though to connect with you?
I love to have conversations. So if you want to chat, send me an email. I'm Kim at Kim Moseman Wellness. And I love these conversations. I love the face to face. But if you're as busy as I am and everyone else in this world, you can find me on Instagram at Kim Moseman or Facebook at Kim Moseman as well. My book is available everywhere books are sold online, and you'll learn a lot about me by reading the book. So if you read it and you have questions or you have comments, reach out to me too, because that's important. I like not only the review, but I like to know what people think and what you took away from the book. So
Well, I
I
know that
would
after
I would
I
enjoy that.
yeah, I'm going to Amazon to leave you a review because I really enjoyed reading the book. And it's you and your heart behind it. But I also learned a lot. So I do appreciate that part. So I thank you for writing it and being a guest on the show.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone, for joining in to Be the Person. If this resonated with you and you know somebody that could benefit from it, please share it with them. It could be just the word that they need to make the change. And it would mean the world to me if you would give us a 5-star review. Thanks so much for joining today.